Welcome back, everyone. Today, we've got an absolutely killer explainer lineup for you. We're diving straight into a highly practical tutorial that originally dropped on MarkTech Post. So let's just get right into it. We're looking at exactly how to upgrade your standard everyday AI chat into a highly structured, programmatic workflow. To do this, we're using something called the SuperClaude Framework alongside the Anthropic API. Look, if you're a developer and you're trying to get serious, genuinely repeatable results out of your AI tools, you are in the exact right place.
Which really brings us to this core problem that honestly we all face as software developers working with AI. How do you actually take a raw, basic AI API and turn it into a persistent, specialized coding copilot? I mean, think about your typical experience right now. You make those raw API calls, and what actually happens? You get inconsistent formatting, right? Or the AI just magically forgets the context of what you were doing literally 3 prompts ago. Or maybe it completely loses the specific tone and constraints you set up for a long coding session. It is so incredibly frustrating. It kind of feels like you're constantly wrestling with the tool instead of actually building with it. So to fix that, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the SuperClaude framework itself. Then we'll break down agents, modes, and commands. Third, we're building the Python bridge. Fourth, executing practical workflows. Fifth, chaining and memory. And finally, extending your copilot. Let's hit it.
All right, Section 1. Meet the SuperClaude Framework, which is essentially a structured AI layer. Now, this framework fundamentally redefines our relationship with large language models. The SuperClaude Framework acts as this deeply structured execution environment that sits directly on top of the Anthropic API. The entire goal of this tutorial is to help us move away from that chaotic, ad hoc, crossing your fingers style of prompting. Instead, we're creating a setup where AI behaviors become highly specialized, incredibly reliable, and, most importantly, easily repeatable. Basically, it's about finally bringing real software engineering principles to prompt engineering. Moving on to Section 2. Agents, modes, and commands, the core components. So, I want you to think of these 3 components as essentially interchangeable Lego blocks, right? Blocks that you dynamically load right into the AI's system prompt. First up, we have the agent. The agent is the specialized persona, or the role, that the AI assumes. Think of this as the identity block. By just swapping out this one block, you completely dictate whether Claude acts as, say, a strict front-end developer, a meticulous security reviewer, or even a high-level business analyst. You're basically giving the AI a very specific hat to wear. Okay, the next Lego block is the mode. Now, while the agent dictates who the AI is, the mode dictates exactly how it should respond. This is the block that changes the response style, the formatting, and any operational constraints. So, as an example, you might snap in a mode that directs Claude to be deeply analytical for a really complex coding problem. Or, on the flip side, you might swap in a mode that literally forces it to be highly token efficient just to save you on API costs. And that brings us to the final block, the command. This is the actual task at hand. It's the specific instruction, the core directive that's driving that individual model call. And here's where the magic happens. When you combine a command with a specific agent and a specific mode, you get this incredibly highly targeted context-aware prompt. It literally leaves zero room for the AI to wander off track and hallucinate. All right, Section 3, the Python bridge. Let's see how we actually wire all this together. So the tutorial walks through this exact setup pipeline. First things first, you're going to clone the SuperClaude Framework repository locally. Then, and actually this part is absolutely key, you scan that repository to discover all your Markdown-based commands, agents, and modes, and you organize them into their own separate buckets. Next up, you initialize the Python bridge. You'll install packages like the rich terminal formatting library, which just gives you this beautifully clean, structured output if you're working in something like Google Colab. And finally, the whole shebang comes together when you dynamically assemble these Markdown assets into the system prompt right before you make that model call to the Anthropic API. I want you to really compare these 2 approaches for a second. Your standard API call, it's totally generic and stateless. You basically just throw a prompt over the wall and, kind of hope for the best. But a SuperClaude bridge call, that is intrinsically role-aware. It takes your base instruction and seamlessly combines it with those carefully selected commands, agents, and modes we just talked about. It dynamically builds this incredibly context-rich prompt that guides Claude toward the exact specialized behavior you need for complex software development tasks. It's a real game changer. Moving right along to Section 4, executing practical workflows for real-world tasks. The tutorial tests this whole bridge concept across a really diverse set of use cases. And I gotta say, the results are striking. We're talking workflows for brainstorming, front-end implementation, deep security analysis, business strategy, and even complex research planning. But here is the absolutely crucial point. By simply swapping out those agent and mode Lego blocks, like say shifting from a front-end coder over to a security reviewer, you completely transform the AI's output. And you do it without having to rewrite some massive, complex prompt from scratch every single time. You're applying distinct behaviors in a perfectly repeatable way.
Okay, Section 5, multi-step chaining and memory, building persistent workflows.
Look, doing single executions is great, right? But taking those executions and actually chaining them together into a persistent, memory-backed workflow, that is where this becomes a massive game changer. The crowning example in the tutorial actually walks you through building a complete CLI, or command line interface tool designed to summarize GitHub repositories. And the workflow moves logically step by step. You start with brainstorming, then architecture design, implementation, testing, and finally, documentation. And here's the best part. Because of that SuperClaude Python class we built earlier, every single phase happens within one shared continuous session. The framework actually supports saving and loading your entire session history. It preserves all that context across multiple steps, meaning the AI literally never loses the plot. Finally, Section 6, extending your AI copilot and customizing the framework. What I really want you to take away from all this is just how incredibly flexible this framework is. The tutorial makes it super clear that you are not locked into any default blocks. Not at all. You can write your own custom Markdown files to spin up brand new, bespoke commands. You can even switch out the underlying AI models if you feel like experimenting beyond the default Claude setup. And honestly, my favorite part, with those save and load methods, you could start a deeply complex AI-assisted coding session on a Friday afternoon, save your progress, and pick it up on Monday morning perfectly without missing a single beat. It completely empowers you to build your own personal research assistants, security reviewers, and end-to-end project builders that are tailored to your exact daily needs. So I want to leave you with this final, genuinely provocative thought from the piece. By structuring prompts programmatically, we aren't just chatting with an AI. We are building personalized, context-aware development ecosystems. Just really think about that for a second. We are fundamentally moving from mere conversation to actual, robust engineering. So the question is, are you ready to stop just chatting and start actually building your own structured AI pipelines? I highly, highly recommend checking out the original tutorial so that you can get your hands dirty with the code yourself. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep building, have fun with it, and I will see you in the next one.